scary stories. I used to work at a large department store known for not paying its employees basic minimum wage. I worked in the clothing section with varying hours. Since I was going to school at the time, one evening I had an older gentleman wander through and strike up a conversation. It wasn't unusual to have chatty customers, so I wasn't worried and talked with him as I was working. I wandered around the department, and he stayed still, telling me all sorts of things, how people mistake him for Latino, but he's Portuguese, how he hates the term Latino because no one actually speaks Latin, how he actually works up north for a couple of hours as some kind of doctor, but comes down fairly often for presentations and meetings. He wasn't out of the ordinary, but definitely seemed more like a lonely man who wanted company more than anything. Fast forward maybe 6 months, and he's come in a handful of times since the initial visit, but never overstepped many boundaries until I found out he was asking about me. Not terrible in and of itself if he's looking for a friend to say hi to, except he came in and asked every single employee he could find for me. Luckily, one time I was stuck in the back the whole day, so never ventured onto the sales floor, and the other 2 days I wasn't working. I had multiple people tell me some old dude was looking for you. I also learned he spent several hours in the store just wandering. Fast forward a month or two more, and I got stuck checking customers out at a register. They do it on purpose. Cashiers get paid more, so they take sales associates like me and train us on the cash register, so they pull us off the sales floor whenever it gets crowded at the registers. Instead of paying for another cashier shift, he happens to come in that day, sees me at the register, and waits in line. If anyone has been to any grocery store ever, you'll know that the line gets long. Every single customer in front of him had full shopping carts of items, but he patiently waited. At this point, I was weirded out because he kept asking about me and repeatedly coming in to the store, so I was weary and kept an eye on him. When it's finally his turn, he walks up, thrusts a picked package in my hand, smiles, and walks off. I was so surprised I didn't react quickly enough to reject the gift. Inside was a romantic card, printed translations for all kinds of common phrases, including "I love you," from English to Portuguese, with a note that said "I can't wait to practice with you," and a $100 gift card for Victoria's Secret. I went to the manager and told her what happened. She took down a description of him and notified security, and told me it was up to me if I wanted to keep the gifts. Co-workers eventually convinced me to keep the gift card, but I chucked everything else. However, I did not use the gift card for more than 3 years because I looked up the fine print and saw that if he knew the card number, he could call and see if it was used. I didn't like the idea of that. When I quit not long after, co-workers kept me updated whenever he wandered into the store looking for me. He did not stop for at least 6 months after I left. I've had many other encounters at work and can share if there's interest. Some are definitely as bad, if not worse, than this. Last year I went out of state for my first year of college to school in India. The first week I formed many friendships, and one of those was with a boy who would end up becoming my stalker. He was fairly normal at the start, and I genuinely enjoyed his company as well as his roommates, and we became quite close, spending a lot of time together. Soon I had developed friendships with other people, and he became a part of my friend group. About a month into knowing him, I started to get a feeling that he liked me more than a friend. I still acted normal around him because I did not want to draw attention to it because the feeling wasn't mutual, and I did not want to ruin our friendship. One night, about 3 months into school, everything changed. This night, all of my friends came to my dorm room to drink before they went to a party. I had told my friends that they could drink in my room, but I did not want to go out because I was very upset by a hurricane that was hitting my town in Florida. All of my friends were supportive of this, except my soon-to-be stalker. Throughout the time he was in my room, he was making jokes about how dramatic I was being, and even when everyone else told him to stop, he wouldn't let up. Finally, everyone is ready to leave to go to the party. My stalker is the last to exit my room before going. He tells me that he cares about me and that if I change my mind and decide to go out, or if I need anything, that I should text him, which I found strange given his previous behavior, but I figured he had come to his senses and was attempting to be a good friend. A couple of hours after my friends leave, I get a text from another friend telling me to come help our one friend out who is too drunk and is vomiting. So I change and walk to her building. Upon arriving, I find out she is fine now and that they put her into her bed. I go outside of their building and cry about what's happening at my home on the steps by myself. I get a text from my stalker asking if I had changed my mind. In that moment, I was sad, and I figured if I went out with them and drank, maybe I would feel better. I tell him where I am and ask if the group wants to meet up. He says that they will come, but arrives alone. He suggests we hang out in my room, but I told him I want to go to see the group. He didn't seem to be too happy with this, but I call one of my other friends to see where they are, and we go to another dorm building where they are drinking. When we get inside, we have a hard time figuring out which room they are on and what floor they are in. My stalker is visibly drunk at this point and pushes me into one of the connecting suites that is vacant. He begins to make fun of me again for being upset and is very touchy. I push him off of me and tell him to stop. We finally find one of our friends, and that friend tells us that we can meet him in his room and he has alcohol there. My stranger suggests that we go to his room instead because he's in a fight with one of the other guys and does not want to see him. I believe this and I agree. When we get to his room, we are greeted by his roommate and a bunch of his roommate's friends. My stalker grabs my backpack with his alcohol and says we should go to my room and our friend group can meet up with us, so we do. My dorm had 2 beds in it, and my stalker sits down on one of them I sleep on, so I decide to sit on the other one. He puts on a movie, and everything is normal at first. I immediately begin texting my one friend, whose room everyone was in, and tell him to bring our friends over to my room. My friends were all drunk at this point, and everyone I texted wasn't making sense. My stalker then gets into the same bed as me and lays beside me. I immediately feel uncomfortable and start rapidly texting my friends and tell them he is acting strange and that they need to come now. He sees I'm on the phone a lot, so my stalker grabs my phone from me and tells me I need to take a 10-minute break from the phone. During this point, he becomes very touchy and suggests we try this trick with my jewel where he exhales into my mouth, to which I reject. I tell him it has been 10 minutes and that he needs to give me my phone back, but he denies knowing what I am talking about. I stand up and move to the other bed because I feel uncomfortable. He gets up and moves as well. I sit at the very end of the bed opposite of him and demand my phone. He continues to play dumb. Instead, he moves closer to me and tries to playfully touch me. I've had enough at this point and tell him that he needs to give me my phone right now, and that it isn't funny anymore. He tells me he needs to go to the bathroom. While he's in the bathroom, I grab my laptop and I iMessage one of my friends to come to my room ASAP and to tell them that he is being very creepy and I need their help. Once he returns, he tells me right away that he wants to level with me and that he thinks that we should hook up. I had been making it very clear the entire time that I did not want that, and I thought that he would be able to read my body language in this situation and realize I was very clearly uncomfortable. I tell him no and that I just want to be friends and not ruin the friendship. He doesn't listen. He comes over to me and starts playfully grabbing me, and when I push him off and tell him to stop, he pushes me down onto the bed and tries to come over me. He grabs my legs and pulls me into him. I was thankfully sober and was able to kick him away from me, and I get up and run into the hallway. He doesn't leave my room and begins to insult me and tell me he never wanted to be my friend and only wanted to sleep with me, and that guys and girls can never be friends. It always has to lead to something more. He then says that he would never date me and that I'm too emotionally unstable for him, and a slew of other insults. One thing that he said that especially scares me is that he was raised to take whatever he wants, no matter what, when defending his actions. I did not know what to do, and I just started yelling and crying at him to leave my room. He refuses and then makes fun of me for crying. At this point, he still has my phone and won't give it back or leave. I threaten to call the campus police on him if he does not leave, and he finally agrees. After that night, he texted me every day for a week trying to talk to me, and one of my friends told him to listen to what he had to say, so I do. He ended up confessing his love for me and told me that he still thinks we cannot just be friends, even after I said multiple times that that is all we could ever be, and ultimately told him I think that we need to stop talking. All of my other friends knew what had happened and dropped him as well. He spent months trying to talk to me and became completely obsessed. I would still hang out with his roommates, but I would only go to their room when he wasn't there. On the few occasions where he would come in, and he would later text me paragraphs about how immature I was being for ignoring him. Finally, I said we could try to be civil and just be acquaintances to be nice, but that led to him getting very mad at me for still acting uncomfortable around him and never wanting to hang out with him. At this point, every time I would see him, he would blow up my phone and text me nonstop about being fake towards him and that I needed to get over myself. I finally blocked him. After doing this, he got very angry. He would show up where I was all of the time and just stare at me. His roommates would tell me that he talked about me every night basically for the rest of the school year. He would try to ask them things about what I was doing and who I was hooking up with. He would go up to my close girlfriends all of the time and ask what he could do to fix things with me. He tried to fight a guy who expressed he was interested in taking me out on a date. A few months ago, after the incident, he made up an excuse to come to my door almost every day. He started trying to talk to me in the hallways. He would offer me his things and even bought me a Christmas present. The last few months of school, he told his roommate that his goal was to sleep with me before graduation and that he thinks I want him and I am just playing games with him. I in no way want him or make it seem as if I want him. The only way I act towards him is completely disgusted. Even over the summer, he has been texting his roommates about me. All of my friends tell me that he is stalking me and recognize that the way I am acting is in no way asking for his attention. I go back to school in the middle of August, and he will be there. He will be living in a frat next year, so I don't have to worry about him being on my floor, but he still worries me. I think something is very wrong with him emotionally or mentally, and not just because of the way he's acted towards me, just in general. I don't want anything to happen to myself or anyone else, and I think I should do something about it. Looking back on that night, I would say his behavior and the things he said were very rapey, and that the people who think if I want something I should take it no matter what are at a higher risk to sexually assault someone. So this happened when I was 9 years old during the summer. I grew up living with my parents and younger sisters, and our house was situated on a cul-de-sac. At the end of our cul-de-sac, there were a row of hedges with an opening at either end that led out to a huge field that had a tennis court, a playground, and a long pathway. This is relevant for later. Everybody that lived on our cul-de-sac knew each other pretty well. There were also a few kids my age, so I spent most of my free time playing outside on the grass with them. It's also worth noting that it was absolutely forbidden for any of us to venture out beyond the hedges without an adult, because our parents would not be able to see us from their houses. So one late afternoon, There were 5 of us, sat on the grass, chatting. It was pretty rare for someone that didn't live on the cul-de-sac to pass through, so it caught my eye when I saw a man making his way hurriedly along the pathway closest to my house. He had a scowl on his face and stared directly at us the entire time he was walking past. There was just complete silence between us until we walked through the hedge opening, and I could tell by the other kids' faces they too felt uneasy about him. We then immediately asked each other if anybody knew or had seen him before. None of us had. It was quickly forgotten about, and soon enough, each of our mothers had called us in for dinner. Around 10 minutes after we had finished dinner, I was in the kitchen helping my mom with the dishes. Our kitchen had a large window that faced out onto the grass outside, so I was taken aback when the same guy walked past again in the same hurried manner with the same scowl, this time staring directly into our kitchen. He had walked past. I gasped and told my mom that weird man was staring at us earlier. She looked up at him walking past, but didn't see anything until he immediately walked past in the opposite direction, again staring at us as he walked past. I yelled, "Mom!" and pointed straight at him. She saw him and ushered me out of the kitchen, saying something along the lines of, "Don't be silly. He's probably looking for someone." I went upstairs to get washed and ready for bed, the entire time feeling a bit freaked out by him. From then onward, I started spotting him at least weekly standing outside our local places, such as the post office, our local convenience store, etc. Each time I saw him, he was alone and not really ever doing much, just standing and looking around. I was always in my mom's car when I saw him, so I just ducked and kept out of his vision whenever I saw him. There were no more direct encounters, so I figured he was probably new to the area, and over time my nervousness of him lessened. Fast forward to winter. I was at school and playing on the playground during our lunch break. Towards the top end of the playground was a padlocked gate that was about 8 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. It was rarely ever used, so it caught my attention when my vision raced past the gate and I caught a shadow standing there. I did a double take, and it was the man. He was pressed right up against the gate with both hands leveled, with his head gripping the bars, staring straight at me. I freaked the hell out and started screaming and hysterically crying and made a run for it into the school building. One of the lunchtime supervisors, who also happened to live with her kids on our cul-de-sac, saw what had happened and took me straight into the nurse's office. The head teacher, along with a few other teachers, were called into the room and asked what had happened. I was too panicked to say anything outside of, "The man is out there." So the playground supervisor neighbor took over and explained to them. She said she had spotted him a few times on our cul-de-sac and had a bad feeling about him, and had told her kids not to talk to him. The teacher went to another room to look at the footage of the security camera placed on the side gate. After a while, they came back to the nurse's office and decided to call my parents and the police. The decision was made for my parents to pick me up from school early so the police can come to our house and take a statement, and because I was a hyperventilating wreck. On the car journey home, my mom told me that the teachers had said the camera footage showed him standing at the gate and then sprinting away, which they figured was because I started screaming and crying. She said it was a good thing because I scared him away, but I was bright for my age, and I knew she was saying that only to comfort me. We meet the two police officers at our house. One female officer, one male officer. They are very friendly and make me feel at ease. Whilst they are asking me all of the relevant questions, they then asked me to describe what he looked like. But being so young, I could only say that he was white, tall, with short brown hair. They pressed for more information, such as tattoos. The only thing that come to mind that he looked like Dan Sullivan from EastEnders. This was met with instant laughter from both police officers and my parents, with the female officer commenting, "Wow, he must be quite good looking." As soon as she said this, my heart sank. After a while, the police had wrapped up the statement and told us to notify them to any more occurrences with this man. I was grateful for their help, but I could not help but feel like I wasn't being taken seriously by the adults. After this, I stopped seeing the guy around town, and the kids on our cul-de-sac say they don't see him either. Life goes on, and gradually, I regained the confidence to play outside again, both with friends and by myself. A year and a half later, I'm 11 years old, and it's the summertime. My parents had gone away on holiday, so my grandma and my aunt were staying at our house, looking after me and my younger sisters for the week. They were a lot more lenient than my parents and would let us play out for longer. And they even let me play over at the tennis court beyond the hedges. It was around 6 p.m. and was still light out, and I was racing my bike up and down the long path situated in the middle of the large field. I had completely worn myself out, and I was on the part of the path where it forks off near the tennis court, so I just sat on my bike for a while trying to catch my breath, while watching a group of people further down on the field playing cricket. Next thing I know, I hear somebody quietly but loud enough for me to hear it say, "Hey." I looked around, and I could not see anybody close enough that I would have been able to hear. I then hear a whistle, which leads my eyes directly over to an alleyway sandwiched between the hedgerow and the tennis court, and I recognize it to be the man from when I was younger. The sheer shock of seeing him again completely froze me up. I could not move. He steps out of the alleyway with one hand over his crotch area. He then uses the same hand to gesture me to come over, and it's then that I see the top button of his pants and his fly undone. I accept the very worst is most probably about to happen, and I instantly go into panic mode. I know that I need to get to safety ASAP, and I figured out my options. The first option is to head straight down the field to the group of people playing cricket, but I don't know these people, and I don't know if I can rely on them to keep me safe from this man. My second option is to ride my bike as fast as I can down the path past the tennis court, around the corner, and into my cul-de-sac. However, the man is in the alleyway, and if he ran through it, he would easily beat me to the hedge opening to block my way, or catch me if he wanted. I started pedaling like a madman and decided to head to my cul-de-sac. As I turn the corner, I see that he isn't at the end of the alleyway yet, so I bomb it through the hedge opening. I hear him running and saying, "Just come here." So I race down the pathway and make it to my house. The entire time I'm shouting for my grandma and aunt, and the kids playing out on the grass, figuring something is up, and ask what is wrong. I ditch my bike outside my house, go inside and lock the door, and I find my aunt in the kitchen. She's panicked and asked me what's wrong. So I explain everything as fast as I could and say we need to call the police. The next thing I know, I hear the kids outside yelling and screaming, "Go away," and calling for their parents. We look outside the kitchen window, and the man is walking past our house, looking at me dead in my eyes, completely undeterred by the commotion outside and my aunt standing next to me. He walks out of our line of vision, out of the cul-de-sac and down the road. My aunt tells me to quickly come with her in her car to follow him, so she can at least see if she can follow him to where he lives. I get in the car and sit in the passenger footwell, out of sight. After about 4 minutes of driving, she brakes and asks, "Is that him?" I poke my head up. We are literally outside of one of my best friend's houses. He's standing at an old beaten-up telephone booth that hasn't worked all the time I've known it to be there. He's holding the phone to his ear, but it isn't saying or doing anything. To his right are 3 girls, a little older than I am, sat on a bench chatting away. Oblivious to the man stood silently at a public telephone that doesn't work. My aunt parks her car and says she's going to sit and watch and make sure the girls are okay, and tells me to stay down. After no longer than a minute, my aunt says these girls are getting up, so I poke my head up again, and I see them go on their way. Suddenly the man literally just drops the phone and turns around on the spot to face the girls. Before he can even take a step out of the telephone booth, my aunt starts honking her horn and opening her door to yell at him to go away and leave the girls alone. I see him completely freak out and make a break for it up an alleyway, with which has 2 exits. The girls turn around and try to figure out what's going on, but my aunt pulls away and was headed over to one of the alleyway exits. My aunt tells me to get her phone from her bag to call the police. We get to exit number 1, but he is nowhere to be seen, so we head to exit number 2. Meanwhile, the policewoman on the phone says she is sending for a patrol car to the area and another to our house, so we can give a statement. We get to exit number 2, and again we can't find him anywhere. We decide to head home to meet the police, where I give another statement. The police officers sent this time around take me much more seriously, and after the statement was given, they said they will also spend some time driving around the immediate area looking for the guy. From then on, I did not see the man at all, and nor did my friend. We did not ever receive any type of update from the police, so I never knew what came of the investigation. The situation ended up with me being super protective and paranoid over my younger sisters whenever they were playing outside unsupervised. And I worried that if they were caught up in the same situation, they might not have been as lucky as I am. So scary, weird guy, let's not ever meet again. Let me start by saying this small little pretext. I live in a town where there is a certain breed of people, like a mix of rednecks, beach bums, like every town. My last story on here was several years ago, and this story takes place about a year after that story. That story involved a gun in my face. Anyhow, the shenanigans started in Texas, Beach Bum Town. I live in a part that is separated by the highway. One area with middle class and some low class with sporadic bits of high class, and the other side of the highway with low income housing and shanties. The shanty part has had meth labs blow up, houses built out of 2x4s and wood, etc. I was sitting at home, normal day, and I decided to make some tortilla soup, but was missing the damn corn tortillas. I asked my mother, who was sitting on the couch watching another Hallmark show, if I could take her car to get some ingredients, to which she begrudgingly said yes. So I take her car to Big Box grocery store and get some tortillas, and thinking that it was going to be a damn good spicy soup with that right amount of sauciness and spices, little did I know how spicy it was going to get. I then left the grocery store thinking how good the soup was going to be when my mother called and told me to put gas in her car. I mean, she drives a Ford Focus. It doesn't use that much gas, but at least it doesn't take meth, which leads me to my next part. I go to the gas station during the busy part of the day and stood in line for about 15 minutes. I give the lady $15, filled up at the gas station from half a tank, when this lady kept staring at me from behind a gas pump. I was feeling more and more uncomfortable. At the time, I was around 18, and she had to have been in her 50s. She would look at me, smile, then stare more with this drugged out look. Sent shivers down my spine. This continued for about another 5, because the drugged up lady dressed like a high schooler with messed up teeth, and the typical meth head approached me. She said I was hot and put her hand on my chest. I tried to back away from her and was completely getting creeped out, and she would follow me around and wouldn't let me go to my car. I had to converse with her for about 15 minutes. I finally was able to distract her. Then I got into my car and drove home. Crazy methed up lady, let's not meet again.